Tonight we're going to talk about resilience, but in a way that I think is probably different than you've ever heard before. So a lot of times when we talk about resilience, people think of it as, lowering their stress or handling their stress, right? That's a handling stress is an okay way to describe resilience, but I'm going to talk about it in a much more systematic uh, uh, systems approach sort of a way. Okay, so when I talk about resilience, I talk about it as gut brain resilience. You'll hear me say from time to time how you feel is not just in your head, it's also in your gut. And that's because your gut is a second brain. So a lot of what we're going to talk about tonight is how we can harness the signals that come from our gut to go up to our brain to change our ability to handle stress or adapt to stress or recover from stress. I also refer to that resilience as everyday excellence. So this is the ability to really, in a situation that is not a good situation, to be able to show up, figure things out, solve problems, navigate your way through whatever that stressful situation is, and be the best version of yourself. That's what everyday excellence is all about. When you have low resilience, you will show up to a situation and you might literally actually say, I can't deal with this now. And you will back away from that stress. That's an actual example of low resilience. When you have high resilience, you could show up to that exact same stressful situation and you might look at it and go, this is not good. But with high resilience, you're able to literally step into that stress and say, let's figure this out. Let's form a strategy. Let's solve the problem, right? That's the difference between low resilience and high resilience. And it's not just a brain thing. It is a whole body thing. And that's what we're going to talk about. What it is, why you need it, and how you can use natural lifestyle interventions to help yourself be more resilient in the face of stress. Okay? So, a couple of housekeeping things before we get going, and I'm going to keep moving this little video guy around so you can see all the cool things on the slides. Here's all the background about me. I always show this slide on a Wellness Wednesday because this is an open call. I do at least three calls every week. Two of them are closed, I guess you could call it, are coaching calls where you have to be part of our coaching community, our certified mental wellness coach community. There's lots of ways you can get into that community. You don't necessarily have to be a certified mental wellness coach. You could be a student that's in process. You could be someone who took one of our mini courses. You could be someone who bought one of our products when we were having a special promotion. So there's lots of ways to get into the community. But we do those calls on Tuesdays and Fridays. And those are calls where I might talk about a different, research study that just came out that week. I might, unpack, one particular aspect of, nutrition. Like this past Tuesday, we talked about multivitamins, and we got online and we looked at a whole bunch of different multivitamins, and I showed what was good about this one, what was bad about that one, and things like that. Very sort of like science, but with a practical application are those coaching calls. And they're set up as meetings. So, we unmute, we talk to each other, we ask questions, we share, troublesome, not troublesome, but problematic, tough case clients, and we try to figure out, what we can do to help that person feel better and perform better, that kind of stuff. So two of the calls are that. One of the calls is the Wellness Wednesdays, where we do a different sort of a topic. So in these open calls, a lot of times people have no idea who I am because it's the first time they're coming on. So here's all the background. I will share three website addresses with you, and they're in this little box. This one, doctalbot.com, is all the education stuff. So it's our certification, it's the mini courses, it's where you can sign up to be part of our community, but it's also a lot of free ebooks and blog articles and videos and things like that. There's this one in the middle, Three Waves B&B. This is our mental wellness retreat in coastal Massachusetts. We're actually closed for the season right now, but when we open in the spring, we invite you to come and you sort of live a mental wellness lifestyle. Learn how to eat and how to sleep and how to move your body and all those fun things. And then this one, Three Waves Wellness. This is my products: probiotics, prebiotics, things like that. So there, you can see all the bullet points. I've been doing the sort of resilience thing for a long, long time. Sometimes we call it mental wellness. Sometimes we call it mental fitness, which is the topic on my last book. Sometimes we call it vigor, which is a mood state that is characterized by physical energy, mental acuity, emotional well-being. Vigor is the opposite of burnout. Sometimes we refer to it as flourishing, human flourishing, which is the opposite of languishing. It's all these different ways of helping you feel your best, perform your best, and resilience is one of those ways that we can help people to sort of rise to the occasion. But these Wellness Wednesday calls, we cover a lot of ground. These bullet points that you see are just some of the ones that we've done in the last few weeks. We've talked about cortisol. We've talked about supplement sourcing, like where do the ingredients in your supplement products come from, and how do you find that out, and like what should you look for and what should you look out for. We've done a collagen masterclass. We just wrapped up a three-part masterclass on GABA and melatonin and sleep quality. So there's all kinds of things. There's a few more websites that I can share here with you. I'll also share these on the very last slide. Um, and if you go to my blog, you can see all the different link outs. Things like we've got a nice YouTube page that has tons of videos. You can watch all of those for free. There's a pretty robust library up there now. This Wellness Wednesdays, you can go to Doc Talbot/Wellness Wednesdays, and you can see what the different topics are that we have coming up. You can sign up for our mailing list so that every time there's a new Wellness Wednesday, you'll get an announcement for it with the Zoom link, and you can put it right into your calendar so you don't miss anything. The Ask Dr. Shawn community that I mentioned, we've got a discussion area, we've got all these archived calls, we've got special reports, we've got mini courses, we've got all kinds of things. If you're a member of the community, you get access to all that kind of stuff. And then this one is kind of a cool one that is kind of new for us. It's a mental wellness quiz. You just go to doctalbot.com/quiz. It's free. It's based on some of the leading scientifically validated surveys that test how we feel. And so, we've through a lot of trials and tribulations, we've cobbled together from some of the leading surveys out there, and we've created one quiz that will give you readouts on five really important parameters. And so you can go take the quiz. It takes, 10 minutes maybe. And you get emailed your results, and you can see like where you're doing well, what you need to work on. You can sort of get a pulse for where you are. And then you can go do an intervention, right? You can go do a lifestyle intervention, all the things that we talk about, and come back and take the test in a month or 3 months or whatever you want to do, and see if you've improved on whatever parameter you were focusing on. So that's something we just make available just to try to help people sort of realize where they stand on the whole mental wellness continuum. So when I talk about it, I talk about mental fitness in the same way that you might hear somebody talk about physical fitness. I firmly believe that mental fitness is as important as physical fitness. In some ways, it's more important. We can have a discussion about that. The mental fitness book actually has chapters about that. Like, which one is more important, but it's kind of a trick question because one of them feeds on the other one, and we'll get into that a little bit later on. If you're more mentally fit, you're likely to be more physically fit, and vice versa. In fact, the reason that I started focusing on mental fitness years ago is because I was more of a physical fitness kind of a person. My master's degree is in exercise physiology. My PhD is in nutritional biochemistry. I've done lots of work with elite level athletes, Olympic caliber athletes. And what we found was the ones that the athletes that do the best, right? They have the highest resilience, but they also have the best mental edge. So they're all in good physical shape, but it was the mental aspect that got them to get the most out of their physical performance. So when we focus on mental fitness with just average people who aren't Olympic level athletes, what we find is if we focus on the mental fitness piece, they start feeling better and better and better psychologically, mentally. And what follows is their physicality improves in so many different ways. And part of that is because a lot of the signals that we're modulating, level of gut integrity, so leaky gut kind of stuff, inflammation, immune system vigilance, oxidation, blood sugar control, neurotransmitter balance, all of that kind of stuff that helps us feel better. Those same signals are involved in our body's ability to repair and regenerate and recover and rebuild and all that kind of stuff. And so, you get the mental benefit, the mental fitness benefits, and you can feel those very readily. But then over time, the physical health benefits just exert themselves, right? You can, it's like a nice side benefit. You can't not get them if you're following the mental fitness routines, okay? Because it's the same biochemical signaling. Um, and that's important because this idea of mental and physical fitness being really like two sides of the same coin, they just have different time courses. It really is a new paradigm. It is changing how we think about everything in all of health and medicine, in all of human performance research. In fact, it's the way we think about it now. It's changing how we think about what a healthy human even is. And a big part of that new paradigm is this. It's this new thinking about the microbiome, the bacteria in your gut, and the signals that go across your gut-brain axis. So when I say resilience is a systems problem or a systems opportunity, I guess, right? You can, whichever end of the coin you want to sort of talk about. It really is about getting that whole system aligned. It's not just calming the stress in your brain. It really is calming the stress across your entire body. And it's not really calming. That's probably not the right way to say it. It's about having your body be able to adapt to that stress. That's the really important thing. Stress isn't bad for us. Stress is actually really good for us. It's when we lose the adaptive ability, that's when it starts to get bad, right? It's the difference between acute stress and chronic stress, which we're gonna talk about today. So this idea of the microbiota, the bacteria in your gut-brain axis, each one of those four words is a target for us. So we can change what the microbiome bacteria are doing. We can change what the gut integrity barrier function looks like. We can change what is happening up here in the brain in terms of the signals that the brain is producing, but also the signals the brain is receiving from the rest of the body. But then that axis is not just a throwaway word. Axis in my world stands for the communication network whereby all of this is connected. So it's these secretions that come from the bacteria and the gut tissue itself. It's peptide signals, it's gut hormones, it's neuroactive substances like neurotransmitter like serotonin for happiness and dopamine for motivation and GABA for relaxation and et cetera, et cetera. It's also things that are a little more esoteric, like short chain fatty acids and cytokines and things like that. They're all signals. And if we can get the right signals, more of the feel good signals and fewer of the feel bad signals, like inflammatory markers, for example, we can help change how people feel and how they perform. But those signals have to find their way out of the gut. And that's where the axis comes in. Some of those signals go through the immune system. Some of those signals go through different parts of your nervous system. Some go through your circulatory system. Some go through another system called the endocannabinoid system. So that axis really is talking about that communication network. And then the signals eventually get up to the brain. And some directly go across the blood-brain barrier. Some you have to have a little shuttle system. Some of them you have to sort of sneak them in through the immune system. But all of this tracks. So what happens lower in the body at the level of the gut eventually determines not only how your brain is going to perform mental cognition, problem solving, creativity, mood, irritability, like all that kind of stuff. But it also can lead to, these kinds of problems, neurodegenerative diseases like Parkinson's and Alzheimer's and things like that, and neuropsychiatric diseases like autism and depression and anxiety and things like that. I try to, even though there's a lot of research in those areas, in those disease states, I try to keep it more on the sort of orientation kinds of discussions, right? I would much rather say, hey, if you're a normal person that is under a lot of stress and you've got a lot of things to do in your day and you're very busy and it's just going, 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 like our normal modern lifestyle, those are the people that I want to talk to because we can take you from that place of feeling kind of stressed out, kind of tired, kind of blah, and we can move you up what I call the mental wellness continuum, which looks like this and help you feel better and better and better. It's this idea that I said already, and I'll say it again. How you feel is not just in your head, it's also in your gut, which is your second brain. It's also in your heart, which is called your third brain. We're going to talk a little bit about heart rate variability tonight because that is one of the ways that we measure stress resilience, right? It's a very convenient way to measure are you, you know, adapting to whatever stress you're under, or are you not? We've been using it with athletes for years and years and years, and now we can use it sort of in a mainstream way. Our second brain and our third brain play a major role in mental wellness, and you can do something. You can do lots of somethings naturally to help move yourself up this continuum. So no matter where you are, you notice here I've put in red, if you're watching the slides right now, I know a lot of people will just sort of put the webinar on in the background and listen to what I'm talking about, but you'll see here that I colored resilience in red. Resilience is only one of the many different ways we can help somebody feel better. And a lot of times when I say feel better, I'll do it in, like with air quotes, because feeling better could be that we lower your feeling of stress. That's great. That's a way of feeling better. You want to feel more calm than stressed. We can help you feel less fatigued or more energetic. We can help you have less confusion or brain fog and better mental focus. We can help you get better sleep quality instead of being, restless at night, right? Those are all different ways of helping somebody, again, in air quotes, feel better. And resilience is different than all of those. And I make that point because when we study this, either in the clinic or in the laboratory, we will try to be as what's the word? Precise as possible, almost like reductionist in a way. Because like somebody might feel better, but it's important for us to understand, are they feeling better because their energy is higher, or are they feeling better because their focus is sharper, right? Those are both great, but they're different ways of helping somebody feel better. Sometimes we can get them both at the same time with the same intervention. A lot of times, though, we'll have one intervention for fatigue, we'll have another intervention for brain fog. And so that helps us to kind of customize for different individuals, right? So once we do the research, then we can say, aha, this intervention is going to be really, really good for somebody who is tired. And this intervention is going to be really, really good for somebody who is, you guys get the idea, right? All these different flavors, if you will, of different mood state. And so one of the things that I love about the kind of work that I do is that we can do the science, or we can learn from other scientists that are doing the science, and then we can apply that science into a regimen, right? We can apply that science into a exercise regimen, or a way of eating, a dietary pattern, or a sleep quality regimen, or a deep breathing mindfulness program, right? There's all kinds of ways we can do it. One of those ways is dietary supplements, and I like the supplements for a lot of people because it's like the easy button, right? A lot of people who are listening right now or watching this on replay are going to go, yeah, he's probably going to tell me, sometime in this presentation, in order to help my resilience, I need to exercise more, or I need to get better sleep, or I need to eat more fruits and vegetables, right? Blah, blah, blah. You've heard that a million times before, and I will have that, right? But that isn't what I'm going to really focus on. Supplements, a lot of times, if they're properly formulated, you can go in and you can modulate whatever those signals are. So if we need more serotonin for happiness, we can do that. If we need more dopamine for motivation, we can do that. if we need to balance your blood sugar so that it's not dropping and waking you up at night, we can do that, right? So the supplements give you that precision nutrition or the ability to do precision nutrition and layer that into whatever other lifestyle regimens that we have. And here are just a few examples. I've been doing this for a long time, won a lot of different awards for the formulas that I've put out there. Best new finished product, botanical of the year, blah blah blah, all that kind of stuff. But each one of these focuses on a different type of mood state, a different type of feel better. And so, it could be resilience, it could be mood or focus or metabolism or well-being. So there's one approach where you can say, yeah, I don't care about focus. I just want mood. Or I don't care about metabolism. I just want resilience, right? And you can do that. There's also the other side of that argument where, a consumer might look at this and go, huh, do I have, there's five, where resilience, mood, focus. Do I have to pick? Can I get all of those? All like, yes, please, load me up, back up the truck. I want to have all of these in my life. And up until recently, the problem was this is $100 product, this is $100 product, this is $100 product, because if you want to deliver real benefits, you have to use really well validated, pure, potent ingredients, and those aren't cheap. So it ends up like pricing people out of the market if they want to have all of this together. And so I spent about a year trying to figure out how you could put all of this together. And we launched this product, Zenith, about a month ago. Right on the heels of that, our company, Three Waves, was selected as a startup of the year honoree, which is really really cool. And I love the fact that what they pointed out is that we're trying to do this in a different way. We're not saying that it's only energy or only mood or only sleep quality. It's all of that. It's the systems approach problem. And that's what we built into Zenith. So I'm not going to give you a commercial for Zenith, but that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to improve all of it: resilience and mood and energy and mental focus and motivation, all in one delivery system. Because a product like this wasn't possible 10 years ago. It's possible now because we've learned so much more about what those signals are across the gut brain axis and how we can modulate them, right, in that sort of very very precision nutrition way. Okay, so, and if you want to learn more about it, you can go here, Three Waves Wellness. Okay. So resilience, I think, is a missing link, if you will, or a missing skill in our modern world. So a lot of the people that I work with, they don't care about lowering their stress, right? Lowering stress typically means something has to go, right? Lowering stress means we need to, you've got five campfires going and you're tending all of them. Lowering stress would say, all right, pick your least favorite campfire. Pick your project that we're going to have to get rid of because you've got too much on your plate. Most high performers don't want to do that. Most people want to be able to do their work and their hobbies and their family, not necessarily in that order, but you get the idea. And a lot of times people want to even put more on their plate, but be able to do it in a very effective way. That's what resilience is about. So it's not about lowering stress. It's about raising your ability to handle stress. I say this all the time to people, this first bullet point. We can't do anything about the stress that's out there in the world. We can't, like, this seminar isn't going to have any solutions for reducing your traffic jams or changing your financial situation. Financial stress is one of the biggest stressors that most of us have. It's not going to change your family dynamics. It's not going to change your jerky boss. It's not going to change like any of that kind of stuff. Stress out there is out there, but how we respond to that stress in here, that's what resilience is all about. And if we can adapt to that stress, if we can improve our ability to handle that stress and sort of like surf with the waves of that stress from a biochemical perspective across the gut brain axis, that's what biological adaptability is all about. And so that's what we're going to cover for the rest of the time we have together tonight. So, a lot of times people will think stress is bad, right? Stress equals damage, or stress equals breakdown, or stress equals something with a wah wah wah, like thumbs down. And that isn't how it is at all. Stress is adaptive. Stress is what motivates us. Stress is um it's the thing that lights the fire under us. It's the thing that there's a good stress. In fact, we have a word for it in stress research. It's called eustress. EU means good stress. The kind of stress most people think of when they're thinking about stress is chronic stress. It's stress that is not adaptive or is maladaptive. We have a word for that too. It's called distress. So you've all heard that before, right? You're in distress. The stress is overwhelming you, and we're not able to recover from it. The graph that you see is from the sort of grandfather of stress research, Hans Selye. This is the general adaptation syndrome, and he discovered this in the 1920s, maybe. um, that stress passes through these three stages. There's an alarm stage, right? That's your fight or flight response. There's a resistance stage, and if we aren't able to get away from the stress, fight or flight sort of reaction, and the stress continues, chronic stress, that's when we get into this exhaustion stage, and that's when stress becomes maladaptive. And so typically we would want to see this part of the curve, the first part of the curve, all day long. Well, not all day long, but frequently throughout the day, right? Let's have some stress, and then let's recover from it. And then let's have some more stress later on and then recover from it. And more stress and then recover from it. That's you waking up and getting out of bed. That's you getting through the traffic and dropping the kids off at school and getting yourself to the office. That's you delivering the report, or finishing the presentation, or making the pitch, or shipping the product, or like all of those things. Those should be little mini stress responses, and then we should shift down and be able to recover from that. That isn't how normal life works, right? Usually the stress comes and stays for the whole day. And that exposure to chronic stress is what ends up breaking us down, leading us to burnout, leading us to languishing, et cetera, et cetera. So if you're interested in that kind of stuff, we have a whole masterclass on cortisol metabolism and what changes your cortisol and how you can, biochemically fight back against those cortisol changes and lower your cortisol exposure and all that kind of stuff. Here's another way of looking at it. Excuse me. This is another curve. The one you just saw was from Selye. This is called the Yerkes-Dodson curve of human performance. And so what this teaches us is that there's an optimal amount of stress. We actually don't want no stress, right? That's boredom. That's when there's not enough stress to help you, to get you motivated and get you into action. There's also too much stress, right? This is when burnout happens. This is when breakdown happens. Where that tipping point is, where stress goes from being a good thing, eustress, to being a bad thing, distress, that tipping point is different for everybody, right? But everybody has it, right? Army Rangers have it, Olympic athletes have it, the toughest people that have that there. And one of the reason I have this here is to remind myself to tell everybody that stress is cumulative. So you might have some financial stress, and you might have some sleep stress because you're not getting, the right hours of sleep. You might have some dietary stress because you're eating the wrong kinds of foods. You might have some relationship stress. You might have some exercise stress, right? Maybe you're training for a marathon, you're training to do an Ironman or something like that, right? And there's a good amount of stress, and there's an over amount of stress, like what we would call overtraining. So we have to consider all of those together, and all of those stresses, they all change your biochemistry in a similar way. And that's why I have this first bullet point. Burnout is biological, not moral. Burnout is not about somebody being weak. Or not have enough like willpower and enough mental fortitude. It's biochemistry. It's cortisol and inflammation and neurotransmitters and et cetera, et cetera. Some of the other things that we're going to talk about. Modern life disrupts our ability to recover. So because we're not eating right, and we're not getting good sleep quality, and we have constant input on our stress monitor. But resilience, we can predict with athletes, the ones that recover better. So using something like heart rate variability, just as one example, there's many ways that we can measure this. We can predict the athletes that are going to get sick. We can predict who's going to get hurt. We can predict the ones that are going to crumble mentally or physically in the later stage of a workout, especially long distance events like, Tour de France's and stuff like that, because we can see how their biology is performing, and that is predictive of mental and physical performance. And so, if you can improve your resilience, if you can improve your ability to adapt to stress, you improve your performance mentally and physically on every single parameter you can think of. So not just from an athletic perspective. So this is what stress resilience really is: your ability to respond, your ability to recover, your ability to adapt, your ability to bounce back from whatever that stressful event is. And I'm not going to like this right here, domains of resilience, physical, mental, emotional, spiritual. That would be a whole, 1 hour webinar to dive into all of those. But the reason I use this graphic here is to point out one thing they all share: flexibility, 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 flexibility. That's what resilience is all about. It's about being able to sort of like catch that stress, figure out biochemically what your body needs to do with it, and then respond back against it. And I'll show you some examples of that as we go through. It's all about adaptability. And as soon as the system loses that ability to adapt, whether at one point of the system or at many points of the system, that's when it starts to break down. That's when your exposure to stress becomes catabolic and your body breaks down, your injuries don't heal, your immune system becomes suppressed, your mood changes, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. I mentioned this already, but just to sort of re-emphasize this: resilience is not about being calm. It's not about taking stress out of your life. It's about being able to handle the stress better. So it's not about avoiding stress. It's not about managing your stress necessarily, sort of, at least in the sort of older way of thinking about it. It really is about sort of like oscillating. Get the stress, adapt. Get the stress, adapt. And over time, what you'll find is that we can raise your resilience so you can handle more and handle more and handle more, with that little caveat that it's not an unlimited thing, right? Everybody has their breaking point, and it's a matter of are you able to recover? Back in my Olympic training days, we used to have a saying that there was no such thing as overtraining. There was just under adapting. And that adaptation was, how you think, how you sleep, how you eat, those kinds of things. We would say it a little bit tongue in cheek, just to make a point with the coaches and the athletes that if they were neglecting the recovery aspect, of their regimens, mental and physical recovery, they were missing out on a whole lot of potential performance. And this one, resilience is not a destination, it's a way of being. It's not just one place where you arrive and you are resilient. It's an ongoing process. Okay. So we'll go through this. This, I think, is the big problem for most people in terms of resilience. If we can solve this problem, we have solved 80% of the issue maybe. And it says two pedals, one system. This describes a part of your nervous system called the autonomic nervous system. So you can think of autonomic being like automatic. This is the part of your nervous system that happens when you're not thinking about it, right? This is what controls your breathing. This is what controls your pupils dilating in the dark, or like opening up in the dark. And yeah, dilating, and then constricting when somebody shines a light or you're in bright sunshine. This is what helps your heart beat. This is what causes your breathing. This is what helps your blood flow, like all that kind of stuff. You're not thinking about those kinds of things. The conscious part of your nervous system, when you ask your body to do something like, I'm going to reach over here and pick up this glass of water and take a sip. For me to do that, I had to activate my nervous system. But I don't have to think about blinking my eyes. I don't have to think about breathing. I don't have to think about beating my heart. I don't have to think about any of that kind of stuff. It's all automatic. So that autonomic nervous system has two parts, two sides of it, so to speak. We don't have to think about any of these, but they are very much changed in their function based on our stress levels. One side is your sympathetic nervous system, or the SNS. This is your fight or flight. So whenever you're activated, whenever you are working on that deadline, whenever you're fighting your way through traffic, whenever you're, exercising, whenever you're doing any of that kind of stuff, that is the sympathetic nervous system. The parasympathetic nervous system has almost exactly opposite effects to the sympathetic. This is sometimes called the rest and digest response. This is when we're repairing the body. This is when our cells are recovering and regenerating. This is when we're rebuilding, taking you know damaged proteins and things like that, and you know digesting them down and then using those building blocks to build up other proteins that are going to work better, right? So it's how our body repairs, how our body recovers. um the big problem is that it is not that SNS is bad and PNS is good. That isn't the distinction here. It's that people get stalled in CNS activation. You get stuck there. Um, the fight or flight response system continues even when we're trying to relax. It's like, think about, if anybody who's on the call right now is old enough to know how to shift a car, right? Drive a manual shift car. If you got stuck in second gear and you're trying to get onto the highway ramp and you're trying to get up to highway speed, but you're in second gear, you're just going to be running the engine, running the engine, running the engine. Eventually, it's going to burn out. You can think of it that way. You want to be able to shift out of that drive. You want to be able to shift out of that activation, that fight or flight response, and shift into parasympathetic. So let's like sort of rewind what I was talking about just a few minutes ago. An adaptive stress response is that we want to have some stress and then some recovery, and then some stress and some recovery. So that's sympathetic, parasympathetic, sympathetic, parasympathetic. What a lot of people end up getting stuck in is sympathetic, foot on the gas pedal, go, go, go. And they get to the end of the day, like now, and you're supposed to be shifting down into parasympathetic so your body can rest and digest and recover and recuperate and all that kind of stuff. But we don't, biochemically, biologically, psychologically, from a nervous system perspective, we stay in sympathetic drive. And that leads us to things like, we can't sleep very well. We don't get good quality sleep. We can't digest our food. We can't absorb our nutrients. There's all kinds of things that sort of um, uh, get blocked if we're always in sympathetic drive. And so if we can do this, if we can improve the efficiency of our ability to shift into activation and then into recovery, back and forth, that can make all the difference, right? So like that's resilience. That's a very nerdy way of describing resilience, because it brings in endocrinology, it brings in biology, it brings in biochemistry, it brings in nutrition, it brings in physiology, it brings in all these different pieces. But the reason I talk about that kind of stuff is that if we can understand kind of like under the hood what is going on to drive us to feel bad or feel good or stay in activation when we really want to be in recovery. If we can understand that underlying biochemistry, then we can go, aha, if that's the underlying biochemistry, this is what we need to do at the root cause, at the level of the microbiome, or the level of your gut integrity, or the level of these signaling molecules, or the level of the neurotransmitters. Whatever piece of the system we're going to talk about, we can get in and we can say, let's rebalance that, let's rebalance that, let's rebalance that. That's how I formulated Zenith, by understanding that underlying biochemistry and then understanding what natural products would rebalance those aspects of biochemistry. But it all comes back to this idea of people getting stuck in sympathetic activation and not being able to shift over into into parasympathetic. Another way of describing that is that it's sometimes it's called SNS dominance. So sympathetic dominance, where you're always getting that drive, drive, drive. And here the cartoon is showing that it's going to be bad for the heart, but it's going to be bad for every single tissue in the body. Every single tissue in the body ends up becoming catabolic, breaks down faster, and that leads to, that leads to the symptoms that we see, right? Your experience is that you just feel awful all the time, right? You feel like you're constantly on, you feel anxious and irritable, you have poor sleep because you can't shut it off, you've got that monkey mind, you eventually have metabolic strain where your blood sugar is going to fluctuate, you have trouble losing weight, or you have a tendency to gain weight. All of that is the same underlying biochemistry. And if we can rebalance that biochemistry, you feel better, you're calmer, you're less anxious, you're able to relax, your metabolism changes, your body repairs. Like we know enough about this biochemically where we can just go, yep, 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 yep. We know about it when it's out of balance, and we can go, yep, 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 yep. We can see why you're getting worse, but we can also see why you're getting better because the biochemistry is predictable enough. We know enough about it where we know where it's going to go. So how do we measure some of these things, right? Before I get into, let me look at my slides coming up. Okay, we're in good shape. Um, how do we measure some of this stuff? Like how do we get to that where I can go, yeah, we know exactly what your biochemistry is going to do. We know like predictably where it's going to lead to help. It's causing you to feel worse, and we can predictably say if we change it back in this direction, you're gonna feel better. We do it by looking at things like this. So heart rate variability. I mentioned that just a minute ago, but I'm going to show you a slide about it. Cortisol rhythm. If you are interested in any of these topics, there's a mini course about it on my website. So there's a whole 3-part masterclass about cortisol. Actually, cortisol is probably 4 parts. There's one about inflammatory cytokines. We talked a lot about glucose stability in the one about sleep quality, GABA and melatonin. Um, Cognitive flexibility is one of the ways that we measure resilience, and profile of mood states is something that I use in almost every single one of my clinical trials research studies because it gives us granularity in how people are feeling better. Okay, kind of what I described, that tension is a different mood state than depression, and that's different than anger, and that's different than fatigue, and that's different than confusion. So like the more granular we can get, the more precise in our interventions we can get. So here's what some of those signals look like that all go into this discussion of resilience. Sometimes we're looking at inflammatory molecules. These are cytokines, right? So cytokines just means cellular signaling, and some of these are inflammatory, some of these are anti-inflammatory. Most of them come from your immune system, and most of that immune system regulation comes from your gut. So, whenever we have a discussion about inflammation being one of these things that can interfere with your resilience, if you're overinflamed, you'll be less resilient. If you have higher cortisol, you'll be less resilient, right? It's that sort of connect the dots between the biochemistry and the behavior, or the signal and how you feel. um, Whenever we have a discussion about cytokines or the immune system, we have to have a gut discussion because 70% of your immune system is in your gut. So if your gut isn't functional, or your gut is out of balance in any of the zillion ways your gut can get out of balance, that automatically means your immune system is going to be out of balance, and that automatically means that your inflammatory balance is going to be off in some way. So we're going to come back to talk about that. MicroRNAs are something that your microbiome produces and signals anxiety in the brain. So we can turn that up or we can turn that down. I'm not going to talk about this so much tonight. I do talk about that in some of the immune system courses that I do, but it's very sort of um, very much in the weeds. So I'm going to leave that aside, but it's a very important signal. Cortisol, HPA axis, that's your stress response system. endocannabinoid system, your neurotransmitter system, your endocrine system, serotonin, oxytocin, dopamine, and then some of these neuromodulators that aren't really they're hard to put into a category, but they're really, really important. BDNF sometimes gets put into a cytokine category. That helps protect your neurons. It helps to grow new neurons. Short chain fatty acids would be in this neuromodulator category. Um, they have benefits for metabolism. They have benefits for mood. They have benefits for gut lining integrity. They have benefits sort of all across the whole system. But all of these signals are what end up driving your ability to be high resilience or low resilience. So let's talk about heart rate variability a little bit. If any of you have one of these little guys, so I'm wearing a Whoop right now. I'm not wearing my Aura ring right now. I don't wear that all the time. Um, if you have an Apple Watch, if you have any of the sport watches, will measure heart rate variability these days. There's all kinds of ways to measure it. We used to, but like before these kinds of wrist modulated ones came out, we could measure it on an earlobe. We could measure it with a fingertip. And what you're looking at, heart rate variability isn't your heart rate, right? So this would be your heart rate would be beat, 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 beat. We could do that for a minute. We could say, oh, your heart rate is 70 beats per minute, right? That's something different. Heart rate variability is the interval between each of those beats. How much time was there between each of those 70 beats? And a higher heart rate variability signals adaptability. A higher heart rate variability signals better recovery from stress, whether that stress was exercise stress or sleep stress or dietary stress or psychological stress or any of the stresses that I've mentioned, how they sort of stack on top of each other. Heart rate variability is a really nice way to get a general idea for how the body is responding. That's your heart basically being your third brain. Um, but the signals that come in there don't stay in there, right? Some of those signals come from the gut. Some of those signals come from your brain. Some of those signals come from your immune system. Some of them come from other parts of your body, like your adrenal gland is making cortisol. Your brain in your head is making a bunch of neurochemicals. They will signal the heart. But the heart will also send those signals out to the rest of the body. And the sympathetic drive and parasympathetic drive have a lot to do with what this heart rate variability is going to do. If you have a low heart rate variability, that indicates just the opposite of everything that I just said. Higher stress levels, poorer recovery for that stress, less optimal recovery and repair and regeneration and bouncing back and all those sorts of things. So this can be a really simple way of just getting a number, right? A lot of these little devices, they all have their different algorithms, so it's hard to say like which one is better at doing it. The secret is, or the sort of moral of the story isn't like people ask me all the time. They're like, "Oh, is Whoop better than Aura, and is that better than Apple Watch?" And on some calls, I might have all three of them on at the same time, and I say they're not. It's not that they're better than each other. They're different from each other. So they'll all measure that interval between each heart rate or each heartbeat, but then the algorithm will be very different in how they calculate a heart rate variability number that they give you. So what you want to do is look at yourself. Don't compare yourself to your buddy, right? Like your heart rate variability might be 45 and your buddy might be 75, right? So he's way better or she's way better. No, you can't compare person to person. You can only compare yourself. And in comparing yourself, you would want to track your heart rate variability and watch it get better over time. We've actually done that in some of our trials where we've done an intervention and we've been able to show heart rate variability is getting better over the course of this 4 weeks, 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 12 weeks, however long the intervention is, based on whatever the intervention is. And that's showing us that those individuals are handling stress better, at least from a cardiovascular dynamic perspective. Okay, so that's one of the ways that we look at it. And I'm actually going to stop there because I saw a couple things go into the chat. So I'm going to go up here and says, I love reframing what it is to be healthy, fit, resilient. Feeling better is going to look very different for different people with different goals. Absolutely. Yep. Resilience handles stress. So people are putting things in here. Sleep number bed, or they love their aura ring. Um, and then someone saying, ha ha ha, I compare mine, heart rate variability, to my husband's on our sleep report every morning. His is almost always amazingly high. That's great, but that's unique to him. It doesn't say anything about you. Like you shouldn't try to compare your number to your husband's. It's that heart rate variability is unique to you, and what you want to try to do is improve yours. And then if you're tracking it, you want to see the trend over time. Am I doing well? Am I not? So you can also use it as something to like alert you. If you see it trending down, you can go, oh, something's off here. Um, what does my diet look like? What does my sleep quality look like? Maybe I need to focus more on sleep. Maybe I'm drinking too much alcohol. Alcohol is something that really affects heart rate variability. Maybe whatever, right? You can sort of use it as a signal to go, huh, and then diagnose yourself of what is it in my lifestyle that might be causing me to trend down. Maybe I'm infected. Like maybe I picked up something at the holiday party, or whatever the case may be. Okay, so yeah, and once you get better at understanding how your body responds to stress, then you can get better at how your body recovers from stress, like how you become more resilient, and you can sort of develop your own customized plan. The more you understand this cortisol rhythm, a lot of times when we talk about stress, whether it's stress in general, eustress, distress, resilience, any of that kind of stuff, people always want to come back to cortisol and say, "Oh, cortisol, bad cortisol. If I could just lower my cortisol, that would be a good thing." And just like stress, cortisol isn't all bad. Cortisol does a lot of really good things in the body. And so we can use cortisol's rhythm to be another marker of how our resilience is going. So here's what a normal cortisol rhythm should look like. In the morning, it rises. Your highest point is your first morning awakening. Getting out of bed in the morning, waking up is like a mini stress test on your whole system. It's a stress test on your brain, on your heart, on your gut, on your immune system, on your circulatory system, on your nervous system. And so your cortisol responds by going up. You have your fight or flight reaction to get you ready to face the stresses of the day, but then it should start declining, and it should reach its lowest point in the middle of the night when you're supposed to be asleep and recovering and rejuvenating. So this is sympathetic drive. This is parasympathetic drive in the later days, and then you repeat the cycle again, right? So stress and then recover, and then stress and then recover, and then stress and then recover. That's a normal, adaptive way of showing somebody is in good resilience. Unfortunately, we'll see changes in cortisol rhythms when people aren't very resilient. And so, here's your normal again, right? Higher in the morning, medium in the afternoon, lower in the evening. But we could get people who are high all the time, and those people are just wired, right? They're just like sympathetic drive all day long. Zzz, like you can hear them humming when they come into the room, and not like humming, like happy humming a tune. Like their nervous system is on fire because they're just in sympathetic drive all the time. That results in a hormone change, which is cortisol overexposure. We could have people who are here. If you look at this one, where cortisol, so this green line is the normal line. This dotted line, sort of like dotted brownish line, they're lower than normal in the daytime. That makes them feel tired. They're fatigued all day long. But then in the evening, when they're supposed to be parasympathetic drive, they're supposed to be winding down, they're supposed to be rest and digest and recovery and rebuilding and all that kind of stuff. Now their cortisol levels are too high, and they're wired. So they're this guy, but only at night. And then where we find a lot of people here, this tired person is also the burned out person. This is the person where their cortisol rhythm is just low all the time. There's one type of person here who is not represented, and it's where your levels are medium. And so if you ever get a cortisol measure, um, your doctor might say like, "Oh, you're within the normal range." Well, the normal range for cortisol is really, really wide. You're typically never outside the normal range unless you have a huge overexposure to cortisol, something we call Cushing syndrome, or a huge underexposure to cortisol. Um, those would be disease states, and there's other things you would do there. But that person who's sort of medium all the time, they're kind of like this tired wired person. They're never high enough in the morning, so they're not able to mount the fight or flight response. They're not able to rise to the occasion, so just feel kind of blah and not motivated. But then in the evening, they're not low enough, and so they feel a little bit agitated, anxious, and irritable. Okay, so we can use cortisol as a marker for that, and we measure that in a lot of the trials that we do. We can look at inflammatory load. Those cytokines that I talked about before, most of those cytokines come from your gut because they come from your immune system, which basically lives in your gut. And if you have higher than normal inflammatory cytokines, that can either be set off by chronic stress or it can be a source of chronic stress. So inflammation is one of those very vicious cycles where stress can lead to more inflammation can lead to more stress, especially at the cellular level and especially when we're talking about the gut lining. So that can be a big source of overall stress, like what we would call cellular stress, and that can lead to more and more leaky gut. So this is about as vicious a cycle as there is. Excuse me, that you can have a leaky gut that leads to immune system problems, that leads to more inflammation, and that inflammation leads to more leaky gut, which leads to more microbiome damage and immune system problems, and that leads to more inflammation. You can see where that is a very vicious cycle. So where you intervene there, we can do anti-inflammatory regimens. We can have people take turmeric. We can have people take black seed oil. We can have them take fish oil. There's all kinds of like direct anti-inflammatories that we can use very effectively. But if we haven't solved that root cause problem of the leaky gut, we're going to keep generating more inflammation and we'll knock it down with something and we'll generate some more and we'll knock it down with something. So a better root cause would be, sure, let's knock down that inflammation that's existing, but let's get to the source of it. So let's calm the immune system. Let's make sure we improve the barrier integrity of the gut, so reducing your leaky gut. Let's make sure we balance your microbiome, your actual bacteria, so they're not the source of gut damage and pure mucus lining and things like that are going to be be causing that leaky gut in the first place. So we can use the gut as both a stress sensor and a modulator of stress. And so this is why a lot of my interventions, when I'm talking about stress that most people think of as a head thing, most of my interventions start as a gut thing because that is where a lot of those signals are originating in the first place. So stress can reshape the gut. It can change the bacteria that are actually growing there. When you're under stress, we will actually see an increase in inflammatory producing bacteria, and we'll see a reduction in the bacteria that produce the feel good neurotransmitters. So like you can put somebody under stress and you can literally see their good bacteria going down and their bad bacteria going up, which is going to lead to the problems that I just described. So we can change that. We can use things like probiotic bacteria, prebiotic fibers to nourish the good guys so they're more resilient, and to not we can use polyphenols, for example, to knock down some of the bad guys. So we're restoring that microbiome balance because we understand the underlying biochemistry in a very precision nutrition way. These microbes signal the brain and the body. So those serotonin signals are eventually going to get up to the brain. Those dopamine signals are eventually going to signal motivation through the body. And the whole like moral of the story when we talk about the microbiome is diversity supports resilience. If you have a more diverse microbiome, not just more good guys and less bad guys, but a better collection of everybody. Um, it's not just about getting five more good guys and just increase more and more and more of those. It's about getting thousands of good guys. One of the best ways to do that is to do things like eat the 30 plant challenge and, get lots of brightly colored fruits and vegetables and less processed foods and things like that. But diversity supports resilience, not just in the microbiome, not just in the gut, but through the entire system. So how do we do that? So how the world looks right now, the things that really kill our resilience are some of the things I joked about at the beginning, right? Things like being stressed out. We can't change that. We can't change the stress that we're exposed to necessarily without taking things off of our plate. So chronic psychological load, physical inactivity, right? Not being active, ultra processed diets, eating a standard American diet, too many processed foods, sleep disruption, not getting good quality 8 hours every night. And then your mindset, right? If you have a fixed mindset and you just think, well, I can't change any of this, well, then you can't, right? If that's where your mindset is fixed, good luck. None of what I'm talking about is going to be helpful for you unless we can get you into more of a growth mindset. So I've been talking about this program for more than 30 years, the Sense program. This is my approach to bringing all of this together. And as science advances, we're able to take new learnings from science and plug it into this framework. So what the Sense lifestyle program looks like is as a buffer to your chronic psychological load, you're using stress management. So it could be mindfulness, it could be meditation, it could be deep breathing, it could be gratitude practice, it could be journaling, it could be a zillion different things that help us to modulate how that psychology of a modern world is weighing us down, so to speak. It could be physical activity. It could be exercise, and not exercise in the sense of training for a marathon or running up a mountain or something like that. It's moving your body, getting your muscles to produce those myokines, which are positive signals. Ultra processed diets. It's not about, eating a perfect diet all the time, but it's getting more nutrient density, eating more fruits and vegetables, eating more fibers, eating more of the right kinds of prebiotic fibers that help you at the level of the microbiome and your gut lining. It's about getting good sleep quality instead of sleep disruption. So, I would love for everybody to get 8 hours of sleep. We just finished our master class on GABA and melatonin. But I also am a realist. I understand that you're not going to get that necessarily. And if you're only going to get 6 hours a night, let's make sure that that 6 hours is as good quality as possible. There's ways that we can naturally modulate all of that. Your gut makes half of your GABA to help you relax and fall asleep. And it makes about 80% of your melatonin that helps you cycle through the right stages of sleep, the REM sleep for your brain and the deep sleep for your body. And then what are you feeding your mind? Like I said about fixed mindset, we want to move you into a growth mindset that you believe that we can change things and that you can get better from where you are right now, and you can move up that mental wellness continuum. And underlying all of this is this idea of the gut brain axis, the idea that the microbiome, the bacteria in your gut, and your gut integrity, right? Not having leaky gut, that's how your immune system is controlled, and that's how your immune system is orchestrated. That's where all your inflammatory molecules are coming from. Not all of them, but 90% of them. That's where these signaling molecules like BDNF and short chain fatty acids and all that kind of stuff, if we can use this as the underlying underpinning of an overall program like this, we can actually make that program work better. And that's the secret of it, is that it's not just saying like, hey, you need to exercise and you need to eat better. No, duh. But if we can change those signals and knock down that inflammation a little bit and amplify some of those good signals, then we can actually make that exercise and that nutrition gain more traction. And that's the thing that's really, really exciting about it. It's an accelerator. So, as much as I get excited about this, the microbiome gut integrity sort of a thing, it's not just about that. It's that is the amplifier of the lifestyle program. So imagine if you could do this. You could bring all of this together. This is what the whole idea underlying Zenith is about. Supports the whole system. It doesn't just focus in on any one of those symptoms. It doesn't just focus in on, hey, why are you sad? why do you have brain fog? Why can't you get motivated and get out of your own way, right? Those are the symptoms. The underlying biochemistry is that system is off somehow in its signaling. And if we focus on the gut brain axis, we can bring that resilience back. And as soon as you bring the resilience back, it is the coolest thing to see because as somebody starts moving up that mental wellness continuum, they start to like their mindset changes on its own. You don't even have to actually go in and say, well, now we're going to talk about a growth mindset, right? Because they start to see the possibilities. And the thing that I love about, using the supplements as sort of like the easy button, like I was saying at the beginning of the talk, if we use the right ingredients, combine in the right way, we can address all of those signals across the entire system. So it's like I think the days are over where we're going to be looking at single entity ingredients, right? An energy supplement that has just one ingredient, like a ginseng. That isn't how the system works. You could do that, I guess, but then you'd have to add on another one and another one, another one to modulate all these different systems. If you can put them all into the same formula, you can have a systematic effect on this overall signaling pathway. So we could start with something like this, right? I am definitely a food first nutritionist. I am definitely a physical activity first physiologist. Like I want you to eat right. I want you to move your body. I want you to get your sleep, all that kind of stuff. There's no supplement that's going to replace any of that kind of stuff. But what if you started with the supplement to say, you know what? Let's improve your motivation. Let's improve your mood. Let's help with your stress eating. Let's help with your ability to relax and not feel wired at the end of the day so you can get a good night's sleep. If you start there, then you can amplify what the lifestyle intervention is doing, and then you can bring all of these different pieces in for whoever, right? And just like I said at the very beginning, and a couple of people have commented on in the chat, for some people it's going to be the motivation piece that is lacking, and if you bring that in, that's really going to help them. So for other people, it's going to be getting rid of their brain fog. And then they're going to come back and go, you know what? I didn't even know I had brain fog until it went away. And now my world is in Technicolor. You guys get the idea. But this stress resilience is so, so important. That's why I wanted to focus tonight before we sort of go into the end of the year. If somebody can solve this, the stress resilience piece, it puts all the dominoes in the right order, and like literally magic happens. It is the funnest part of my job to see that happening, because what ends up happening is you will see moms who are less stressed out and more effective in their day. You'll see dads who aren't just angry and pissy at everything when they come home from work in the afternoon. You'll see kids that are more effective at school, not just academically, but in their extracurriculars and in their social situations. And you'll see all of that coming together. And people won't necessarily say it that way, right? They won't say, "Oh, my resilience is better, my vigor is better, my flourishing is higher," right? Nobody talks like that. They'll just say, "I feel better," right? And that's what I want to hear. And then what I love to hear is I love to hear it from my coaches. I love to hear it from their clients. I love to hear it from the people that I work with directly. I love to hear it when somebody says they're feeling better. I'll ask them why. Let's try to get as precise in your vocabulary as possible. Why are you feeling better? How are you feeling better? What are you doing now that you couldn't do before? What are you noticing in your life that has improved that was gone before? Like I've had moms say to me, they go, you know what? I didn't notice anything until my husband told me. Husbands will say the same thing. It was my wife that first pointed out that I wasn't as crabby. Kids will sometimes notice it in their parents, and they'll say, "Yeah, mommy's not, snapping at me as much," right? And mom will go, "Oh my gosh, you're right. That's so hooray!" Like they're little wins, but they're really, really important wins, and it kind of comes back to that idea of resilience. And it's just it's the coolest thing to see. So if you guys like this kind of stuff, here are the websites again. I've got so much places you can dive in more, right? YouTube, Wellness Wednesdays like this, please come, please share it, please bring all your friends. The Ask Dr. Shawn community. This is something you have to pay for to get into, but I think it's valuable, and I think we make it very, very affordable for people in a lot of different ways. And then the mental wellness quiz, the mental fitness quiz. Go and take that. Go and share that with people so you can see where they are. Holidays, it might be a little skewed, right? Because it's a stressful time of year, but you can come and take it again and again and see how you're improving your resilience, how you're improving your mood, how you're improving all that kind of stuff. So this is our last Wellness Wednesday for this year, and I will see you guys in January. And I hope you bring your friends. So let me look one more time in the chat and see if there's anything else here. And people are just kind of corroborating what I said about how you can use the trackers to give you red flags or green flags if you're going the right direction. Um, my 20-year-old started taking Zenith about 3 weeks ago. While he can't pinpoint it, he said he just feels better, period. So that's exactly the kind of stuff that we see. My husband's no longer angry in awful rush hour traffic, and just some other positive comments. So thanks a lot, you guys, for jumping in. And like I said, have a good holiday and Happy New Year. I'll see you in January. All right, bye bye.